Today we're going to make cornbread to go with our baked potatoes that we're baking in the oven right now, the wood oven. We like sweet cornbread in the Winans household, so if you're familiar with, I think it's called Jiffy Mix. That's a sweet cornbread versus what a lot of Southerners like is like an Aunt Jemima recipe that doesn't call for any sugar. My kids love this for breakfast with milk, tore out into pieces with milk over it, or just with out of the oven with butter on it. In this recipe, I double the batch. It calls for 4 cups of cornmeal, and as you can tell, I'm not overly precise with my measurements. Doesn't seem to make much of a difference. A little too little, a little too much. I don't sweat it. It calls for 2 cups of white sugar. Just mix it all in the same bowl together. 2 cups of white flour. It calls for 2 level teaspoons of baking soda, and I'm a little bit more reserved on my measurements there because that can make a huge difference in your product. At this point, I just take a spoon and as I throw it across the work surface here, mix it up just a little bit, and that's primarily to mix the baking soda up amongst the dry ingredients. Other than that, I really wouldn't worry about mixing the cornmeal and the flour and the sugar together at this stage in the game. We need 4 eggs, and then 2 cups milk. Now you can also throw in a pinch of salt. I usually do not. The milk, you can use buttermilk or sour milk, or you can even add a tablespoon per cup of milk of vinegar to help sour the milk along, and that's usually what I do for the milk purpose. Then you just mix it all together. I'm going to put this down so it's easier for me to mix. Okay, the consistency of your batter is going to be thicker, and it's okay even if it's a little bit thicker than this. Maybe you have more dry ingredients in or more liquid, but a little change in that's not going to hurt the outcome of your bread. Alright, I went ahead and put the batter in the pans, but usually what I use for the cornbread, because I don't want real thick cornbread when it takes longer to cook, and it tastes right out to me the longer it takes to cook. This particular recipe makes 2 large size pie pans, or I use cast iron. I have a large cast iron skillet that I will use to cook it in. So you can use if you're accustomed to glass or whatever, probably like a 9x13, or trying to think of what other sizes are out there. But the main aspect is how thick your cornbread ends up. It's going to determine a lot of the texture for you on it. So here in a minute, when I pull the potatoes out, I will slide this in the oven and show you how to turn the bread, what it looks like before you turn it, and that, how dark it needs to be. The oven for the cornbread's running, it's hard to say, I'm going to guess around 350 or so. The thermometer on there is not correct. So I'm going to put the cornbread in, and it's going to have to be what will happen is this one back here towards the firebox will start to cook quickest on that side, and I'll have to rotate them about 10 minutes into the cycle, and then I'll have to rotate the pans completely about another 10 minutes into it. Cornbread's cooking nicely. As you can see, this front one is a very light color. This back one here. This back one is much darker than the other, so I'm going to rotate the pans so they have more of a chance of cooking evenly. You see like the The bread's already pulling away from the sides of the pan there. It doesn't really take long at all for the cornbread to cook in a nice, moderately hot oven. See what we have here. It's probably been 25 minutes max. That is the loaf that was originally in back. And then there's the loaf that was in front. So, turned out pretty nice. I did want to show the texture of the bread. When you cook it in this size pan, it's nice and thick. And the bottom's nice and brown there. But it's a nice sweet bread. I know there seems to be a lot of sugar in it, but if you buy a lot of processed stuff, in reality there's not. You know, it's straight granulated sugar. It's great for breakfast. It's great for a snack. I mean, if my kids are going to have a snack, something sweet, this is one of the things that doesn't bother me at all. You can substitute if you can reduce the sugar, and I've done that before. We don't enjoy it as much. And if you want, you can substitute some honey for it, but then you have to increase your cornmeal because the honey is obviously liquid and it changes the texture of your batter.